He was just 5 when the world swallowed him, all alone, scared, and miles away from home. Saroo Brierley was raised in a poor Indian slum by a single mother, and one night he vanished only to find his way back 25 years later. So how did a missing child find his way back to a forgotten past? And where is Saroo Brierley now? Welcome back to Never Ending Celebrities. Saroo Brierley wasn't always Saroo. He was born as Sheroo Munsi Khan in 1981 in a dusty slum called Ganesh Talai. His world was small with 1 room, 4 siblings, and a mother who carried stones on her back at construction sites. There was no electricity, no school, and no real childhood, but there was family. And for a little boy like Sheroo, that was enough. His father, who was once a building contractor, left the family when Sheroo was barely 3. He married another woman and vanished without looking back. But his mother, Fatima, never asked for a divorce even when she could. Instead, she held on, quietly raising 4 children on her own. But love didn't pay the bills, and hard work couldn't always fill their stomachs. Sheroo never saw a classroom, not even his older brothers, Gudu and Kalu. They begged for scraps at the market and train station. Sometimes Gudu found odd jobs like sweeping floors in train carriages or washing dishes behind cheap restaurants, while Sheroo wandered door to door with a tin bowl, hoping someone would give him leftover rice. They made it work, not safely, but enough to get through the day and survive. But in 1986, one ordinary evening changed everything. Guru was heading to Burhanpur, a town about 70 kilometers to the south, hoping to find work for the night. Sheroo begged to go along with him. He was just 5, stubborn, and followed his brother like a shadow. At first, Guru hesitated, but then eventually he gave in. By the time the train reached Burhanpur, Sheroo was too tired to stand, so Guru laid him on a bench at the station and promised to return. But he never did. Sheroo waited for minutes, and then hours. When he grew restless, he saw a train parked nearby with its doors open. He thought Guru might be on board, so he climbed inside. The carriage was empty, the door wouldn't open. Before he could make sense of anything, the train moved forward and didn't stop. For nearly 30 hours it kept moving, cutting across the country until it finally stopped at Howrah Station in Kolkata, nearly 1,500 kilometers from home. Sheroo didn't know where he was, and he didn't speak Bengali. He didn't even know how to pronounce Khandwa clearly. He was directionless and swallowed by one of the busiest cities in the world. For weeks, he survived on scraps and luck, sleeping under benches, stealing food from the temple offerings, drinking from public taps. And then he met a stranger who showed him kindness. One railway worker offered him food. However, when he introduced Sheroo to another man, something felt wrong. So he ran away before anyone could stop him. He didn't know where home was. The city around him was not safe anymore. It felt endless. But if he didn't belong here, where was fate pulling him next? Out of nowhere, a teenage boy noticed Sheroo wandering alone in the city, and he helped him reach the police. The police placed him in a shelter for abandoned children and later transferred him to the Indian Society for Sponsorship and Adoption in Kolkata. They tried to search for his family, but Sheroo remembered too little, so he was officially declared a lost child and put up for adoption. In September, he was adopted by the Australian couple Sue and John Brierley in Tasmania, Australia. And this is how Sheroo became Saroo. He had a warm bed, a loving home, and parents who cherished him, but the past didn't stay buried. It tugged at him quietly when no one else was watching. Would he remember anything of the world he left behind? And if he did, would he ever be able to find his Indian roots again? After the adoption, his life in Tasmania felt peaceful on the outside, yet inside, Saroo carried a silent ache. He grew up in Hobart, attended school, earned a hospitality diploma, and even studied business at the University of Canberra. On the surface, he appeared exactly like any other Aussie kid. He made friends, joined sports teams, and blended into suburban life. But the memories wouldn't fade. Indian summer nights, a rusted water tower, and the feel of narrow station platforms. They didn't live in his mind, but behind his eyes. When he was in his mid-20s, Saroo finally gave in to the ache. On sleepless nights, he opened Google Earth and began searching, scanning the digital landscape for the shadows of a life he could barely remember. He asked his Indian friends how fast trains usually traveled. They guessed around 80 kilometers per hour. So if he'd been on a train for 12 hours, that meant nearly 1,000 kilometers. Instead of guessing blindly, Saroo used that number to draw a rough circle around Calcutta, then started narrowing it down, cutting out areas too far north or south, chasing a feeling more than a name. For nearly 3 years, night after night, he flew over satellite maps, tracing endless rail lines and cities. He searched for a single landmark, a footbridge, a water tank, or fountain. It felt like chasing one drop in a sea of pixels. It was overwhelming, but it wasn't impossible. Then, one night in early 2012, around 1 a.m., everything changed. Saroo spotted something on the map, the footbridge beside a massive industrial tank near a railway station. He zoomed in, and the name popped up, Burhanpur. But it still wasn't enough. He followed the tracks north, heart pounding, until another name appeared, Khandwa, the same fountain where he'd fallen and hurt his leg as a child. The memories came flooding back, yet a part of him didn't believe it. For days he questioned everything. What if it was another dead end? What if he was wrong again? He needed to clear his questions, so he reached out to a local Facebook group. They confirmed that Ganesh Thalai was real. It was exactly as he remembered, a mixed Hindu-Muslim neighborhood. That was all he needed. Now he couldn't wait any longer. On February 10th, 2012, Saroo flew to India, back to the place where his life had been split in two, as he landed in Calcutta and made his way to Khandwa. Finally, after 25 years, he stepped into the place he had forgotten but never truly left behind. The streets felt smaller than his memories. He passed the rusted chai stall, the crumbling fountain, and then the house with the tin roof. It was everything he had searched for, yet nothing could prepare him for what waited on the other side. After more than 2 decades, Saroo found his birth mother, and alongside her, a sister and a brother who had spent their lives wondering where he had gone. The reunion was filled with hugs, tears, and quiet confusion. His mother told him how she endlessly searched for him and his brother that day. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find him. However, she found that Gudu was hit by the train that very night, and his body was recovered. But Saroo was completely gone, and still, with nothing to hold on to, she refused to believe he was dead. As if deep down, she felt that her younger son would come back, and so he did. After 25 years, Saroo didn't just find his mother. He stepped back into a life he thought was gone forever. But after all the searching, the tears, the reunions, was it really enough? Did finding his past finally bring him peace? Or did it awaken a whole new kind of ache? He thought the hardest part was over. After all, he found his hometown, stood in the streets of his childhood, and wrapped his arms around a mother who never stopped waiting. But the real part is that no one warned him about what was just beginning. When Saroo shared his story publicly, it didn't just resonate, it actually exploded. In June 2013, he released a memoir called A Long Way Home, and suddenly, the quiet life he had in Hobart became global. Media outlets across the world wanted interviews. People cried reading his words, but the weight of his story couldn't be captured in pages or headlines. Therefore, his story became famous in Lion, a film starring Dev Patel and Nicole Kidman. This movie premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival in 2016 and earned 6 Oscar nominations. Strangers began recognizing him on the street. He wanted to tell his story, but reliving it over and over again came at a cost. Every interview reopened wounds, reminding him of a train he couldn't escape, a brother he never got to say goodbye to. Even though people called it beautiful, miraculous, for Saroo, it was also raw. The trauma hadn't vanished just because it had a Hollywood ending. If anything, the spotlight made the pain feel worse. Soon, his 2 worlds began to fall. He was Saroo Brierley, a man raised in a white Australian family, fluent in English, educated with Western manners. But he was also Sheru Munshi Khan, born to a working-class Indian mother in a place where time hadn't moved since he left. He had 2 mothers, 2 languages, and 2 homes, but somehow he didn't fully belong to either one. He tried returning to India again, spending more time in Khandwa, but he wasn't the barefoot boy from Ganesh Thalai anymore. And in Hobart, life could never go back to the way it was before the cameras came. The fame was kind, respectful, but still heavy. Everyone looked at him as the boy who found his way home, but they didn't see the man still figuring out where home actually was. After the whirlwind of press tours and film premieres, Saroo returned to where it all started, not just for closure, but to rebuild something real. He began visiting India regularly, reconnecting with his birth family, and trying to bridge the distance that 2 decades had carved between them. He helped his mother financially, spent time with his sister Shakila, and even contributed to improving conditions in his old neighborhood of Ganesh Talai. He was proud to have reclaimed his identity, proud to be both Indian and Australian, but that duality was not easy to carry. He often felt like he was translating himself, explaining his Australian side to India and his Indian side to Australia. He didn't fully fit into either world, even though both claimed him as their own. Saroo learned to live between 2 worlds, balancing both, never leaving another being. But where does he now, and does he still belong to both? Saroo Brierley still lives in Hobart, Tasmania, the place where his parents raised him. He lives a quiet life, away from the film buzz, working in the hospitality and business sectors. But his story has never truly left him. He continues to visit India, staying connected to his birth family and supporting them whenever he can. His mother, Fatima, still lives in Khandwa, and though they speak different languages, their bond doesn't need translation. His sister Shakila often serves as the bridge, both emotionally and literally, between Saroo and the rhythms of the world he was born into. At the same time, his love for Sue and John Brierley remains just as strong. Saroo never saw his search for identity as a rejection of the life they gave him. If anything, it was a tribute to it. Sue supported every step of his journey, even when it meant he had to look backwards to move forward. He also spends time speaking about lost children, adoption, and memory. He's involved in charitable work related to missing children and Indian street outreach programs, quietly using his platform to help others find their way, just like he once tried to. But perhaps the most powerful thing Saroo did was something only a few ever do, and that was build a home between 2 worlds, one that speaks 2 languages, holds 2 mothers, and understands 2 very different definitions of love. In a world where so many search for one clear identity, Saroo found peace in a complex one. He carries it all, the boy who got lost, the man who was found, and everything in between. Because in the end, home isn't always a place on a map. Sometimes, home is the story you carry and the courage to keep walking toward it. So, what do you think? Can someone truly belong to 2 families? And if you were in Saroo's place, would you go searching for the life you lost? Let us know in the comments below. And if you love real stories with twists and drama, don't miss our video on how Drake broke his silence after Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime diss. It's unmissable.